Grab a pint, grab your lineup. We're about to tap into fantasy. Welcome back to Tap Into Fantasy, the podcast with a professional fantasy mind and an amateur beer palate. I'm Lance Gandy. You can find me on X at LG_fantasy. Welcome to Thirsty Thursday, the show that mixes fantasy football with just enough alcohol to make your lineup decisions feel smart. On today's menu, we've got a Thursday night breakdown that will either save your week or screw you harder than a Vegas cocktail price. I'm also cracking open a Weihenstephaner Kristallweissbier, which sounds like a Harry Potter spell for bad decisions, while roasting some hilarious Untappd reviews. Then it's 2 players I'm high on and 2 players I'm not at every position for the weekend, because nothing says responsible football analysis like making bold claims while sipping German wheat juice. So grab a drink with me, because whether your fantasy team is undefeated or already in tank mode, at least your ears are about to win. But first, we bow before the fantasy gods. May the best drafts of your past be the worst of your future. Let's tap in. Okay, like I said, I'll be trying the Weihenstephaner Kristallweissbier. I reviewed the Weihenstephaner Corbinian on episode 2, and it's actually still 3rd on the big beer board. It was quite delicious. I've never had one from this brewery I didn't like. Hopefully this keeps the streak alive. The origins of this brewery date back to the 720s. The freaking Middle Ages. In 1040, the monastery acquired their brewing rights. So you can mark it now that if I make it to 2040, we're having a Thirsty Thursday episode at the brewery for their 1000th anniversary party. Okay, before I dive in, mouth first, let's see what the Untappd sages have to say. These are real Untappd reviews. Every beer has a story, but some turn that story into full-blown fan fiction on Untappd. Half the time, I can't tell if they're reviewing a stout or writing erotica with barley in it. Welcome to the scrolls of the booze realm. Okay, here's the first review from my neck of the woods in Dallas. Intensely German beer, you are transported to a Bavarian hall to onlook as fur and leather-clad warriors hurl insults at each other by torchlight. Also, it's colder than you remember. Winter is coming. Just leave the poor old man alone. George R.R. Martin is never finishing the last Game of Thrones book, Winds of Winter. The Bavarian hall imagery is cool, but let's be honest. If there are fur and leather-clad warriors by torchlight, you're not drinking a Kristallweissbier. You're about to join a very niche OnlyFans. Okay, so I'll give you another gem of a review later in the episode that you shouldn't miss. So go ahead, hit the like button. It's free, and it makes me feel fancy. Subscribe while you're at it. Alright, after surviving that Untappd review that sounded like a rejected scene from Game of Thrones meets German 50 Shades, I think it's time for me to do some magic of my own. Wand in one hand, bottle opener in the other. Expecto Kristallweissbier. It is opening draft time, and I promise never to do a stupid Harry Potter reference again. This is the segment where I pretend to be a professional beer reviewer, but really just drink on the internet and hope you laugh. Think you might have a beer that deserves the spotlight, or maybe public humiliation? Send it my way at tapintofantasy@gmail.com. I'll crack it open on the show and sacrifice my liver, self-respect, and probably a few brain cells to see if it belongs on the next episode and the legendary Big Beer board. So last week I tried the Samuel Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout and put it 4th on the Big Beer board with a poor score of Adult Nesquik with benefits. It was a perfect dessert beer to celebrate after you just creamed your opponent in fantasy. Okay, let's pour this Bavarian beast. Today I have my sick Ninja Turtles pixelated beer glass to pour into. All right, we are starting the pour. It's really strange to me how this is a wheat beer. I'm just so used to unfiltered that this looks like champagne. Man, I just can't miss on these pours anymore. That's pretty. All right, well, bottoms up, everybody. Wow. Yeah, that's a very different wheat beer. Very carbonated with some banana and sweetness at the end. Like I said, I'm used to unfiltered wheat beers, so this pour looking like champagne with more head just kind of threw me for a loop. But thankfully, it blows that out of the water. It almost tastes like more of a saison to me than a wheat beer. I'm very okay with that. All right, well, I will keep sipping on this Bavarian nectar and give you my pour score at the end. All right, well, let's talk some Thursday night foosball featuring the Seahawks and Cardinals in Week 4. You can find my full rankings every week on tapintofantasy.com. I have Week 4 rankings up in all scoring types, as well as defense, kickers, and all that jazz. Remember when we all said that Sam Darnold was a product of Kevin O'Connell? Well, through the first 3 games of this year, Sam Darnold is third in yards per attempt behind Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones. Yeah, Daniel Jones is second, which tells you the season is already drunk. Maybe he's just legitimately good. He goes up against an average Arizona passing defense that can't rush the passer. They are 28th in sack percentage this year at 3.33%. They've been pretty good against the rush this far, so I expect Darnold to have time to rip them apart on Thursday night. They're also missing a few key players in the secondary, so he's a decent start in 2 QB leagues. Kenneth Walker has also been a top 10 back the past 2 weeks, but the usage is still sketchy. Zach Charbonnet had been outsnapping him the first 2 weeks, and last week without Charbonnet, Walker played 53% of snaps and had 17 touches for 39 yards. It looks like Charbonnet is going to play in this one, and I expect him to outsnap Walker again. The Cardinals are top 10 in EPA against the run, so Walker's just really a boom-bust RB2 this week. Charbonnet is a borderline flex play if he does go, but keep an eye on his status. Jackson Smith and Jigba is obviously an every week starter, especially with the injuries in Arizona's secondary. He's the only Seattle pass catcher you can really trust. Cooper Kupp is an okay PPR flex if you're desperate, but at this point, his ceiling is about as low as my standards after 3 beers. Torrey Horton should stay on your bench for now, but keep watching him because he might sneak into flex territory later in the year. The tight end room is just a black hole where fantasy managers go to die, so we will skip that. Now on to the Cardinals. Kyler Murray has been his usual brand of frustrating, finishing as QB 16, 22, and 16 through 3 weeks. In 1 QB leagues, you can find better. Seattle is about average through the year, but against Carolina and New Orleans, 2 average defenses or worse, Kyler put up just 18 and 15 points. The Seahawks are bottom 10 in sack rate at 5%, but they are elite at stopping the run and baiting quarterbacks into making dumb throws with their sim pressures. Without James Conner and with Marvin Harrison Jr. struggling, this could be a very quiet showing for Kyler. With James Conner injured, it's going to be the Trey Benson show, and he's been super impressive so far. He's second in yards over expected per attempt and running like he actually knows where the holes are this year. Last season, he looked like a blind man sprinting through traffic, so the glow-up is real. That said, this week is just a bad setup. Like, the Seahawks defense is elite at stopping the run, and these are 2 very methodical teams. Seahawks are 26th in plays per game. Arizona's 22nd. This could be a slog of a game with 2 above average to great defenses. He's a borderline RB2. I would start Cam Scatabo and J.K. Dobbins over him. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a disappointing rookie campaign, finishing as the wide receiver 29 last year. This year, he's been worse. He's wide receiver 43 on the year so far. It's a problem on both fronts as he's had some easy drops that would have gone for big gains or touchdowns, and he just hasn't had the volume because of a low amount of total plays, Kyler's inconsistencies, and a below average pass rate. Like, check out this image from Ian Hartitz on X. Kyler is easily the lowest in percentage of targets that go to receivers at 38%. For context, the Rams are at 78%. He also scrambles on a decent number of dropbacks, which lowers the targets even further. It's going to be a long season for Harrison owners. He's a boom-bust flex play this week and probably for the rest of the season. The real pass catcher you want to own on this team is Trey McBride. He's out-targeting Harrison Jr. by 7 so far and is the consensus number 1 tight end this week. The Seahawks' one weakness on defense is against tight ends, as they've allowed the 6th most yards and the 2nd most fantasy points so far this season. Like, just set it and forget it. So next we'll go over the studs and duds for the Sunday and Monday games, but first, a quick break. This episode is powered by W Energy. It's my go-to for a clean boost with zero crash and zero jitters, whether I'm grinding out drafts or just need that mid-afternoon push. No junk, no guilt, just focus. Hit the link in the description and use promo code TAPINTOFANTASY for 10% off. W brings the energy. You bring the winning picks. Okay, we're back, and now let's talk about the players I'm hyping up and fading for the Week 4 slate. I'm going to be giving you 2 players that should boom and 2 players that should bust for every position, except 1 each for tight end for the Sunday and Monday games. Let's kick it off at quarterback. Geno Smith made you very happy in garbage time last week against the Commanders with 26.1 points. That's not garbage time. That's 5-star steakhouse service and a dumpster behind the stadium. Now he gets Chicago at home, a defense that's given up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The over-under is a healthy 47.5, with Chicago favored, so Geno should get plenty of volume. The only real concern is pressure up the middle with this offensive line, but Chicago ranks just 22nd in sack rate, so I'm not sweating it. He's my top streamer of the week. I've got him ahead of both Jared Goff and Brock Purdy. So this is probably not one I plan on doing again, but Tyrod Taylor is a sneaky play this week if Justin Fields can't go again. He was quietly QB9 last week against a pretty feisty Tampa D. This week he gets a... what's the opposite of feisty? Tepid? Yeah, we'll go with that. A tepid Miami defense that has literally been worse in EPA per play than the Cowboys defense. That's not easy to do, so congrats Miami, put that on a banner. Tyrod may be rocking some gray hairs these days, but he can still scoot. He ran it 8 times for 48 yards last week, and I'd expect a similar line here. If Fields can play, you basically copy-paste this whole analysis because either guy can do work against this defense. Then Mike McDaniel will say something in the post-game presser that sounds like he's either trolling or auditioning for a Wes Anderson film. Bank on it. On to the Week 3 pumpkins. The first one's a layup, Dak Prescott. Dak has been very Dak so far, finishing QB5 and QB17 against soft defenses, then QB29 when he faced a real one in Philly. Now he's without CeeDee Lamb for a while, and he's up against the Packers, who bring a top 10 pass defense, a top 10 sack rate, and, oh yeah, Micah Parsons on the other side just to twist the knife. Overall, the Packers are 3rd in total EPA on defense, which is obviously bad news. And worse news is on this image, courtesy of @BenBBaldwin. This is a composite score of offensive line rankings from PFF grade, SIS blown block percentage, and ESPN pass block win rate. The Cowboys are 24th on this graphic, and now their right guard, Tyler Booker, is out for a few weeks. That just shows me that Dak has to be literal Superman to will this team to victory, and even Superman couldn't do that against this nasty defense. I would even look away from him in 2 QB leagues if possible. Okay, one more QB bust for the week, Baker Mayfield. He gets Philly at home, and this defense hasn't been what it was last year through 3 weeks. They're just 11th in EPA per play. And Baker is also just a gamer, one of the most fun players to watch in the league as he trucks a guy 50 pounds bigger than him. The offense has been humming. They're 5th in EPA per play, 9th in EPA per pass. However, it looks like their star left tackle Tristan Wirfs is still out another week, and Mike Evans is gone for now. That makes the rookie Emeka Egbuka their number one receiver, and yes, he's been impressive, but he was lining up against the number 2 cornerback for the most part. Chris Godwin has a chance to play some in this game, but he'll probably be on a snap count and probably won't have the same explosiveness he had until, let's get real, 2026. That's exactly what happened when he tore his ACL and MCL back in 2021. He came back in 2022. He wasn't himself until the next year. So Baker's rolling with duct tape on the line and a half-speed receiving core against a defense that can strangle a game once they're up. The over-under is only 43.5. This could just be a grimy game. Okay, let's do some running back booms, starting with Breece Hall. Yeah, he was quiet last week, but that was against Tampa Bay, a defense that treats running backs like nightclub bouncers who are way too into their job. This week, it's Miami, and we've already established they're basically the village bicycle of NFL defenses. Breece owns a 16.9% target share, has a couple red zone looks, and most importantly, he just looks like Breece again. Like more juice, more burst, fewer oh no, he's still recovering moments. Like I could see him ripping off a long screen pass or house call, especially in a close game where they'll lean on him heavily. A sleeper for this week is the Texans' Nick Chubb. So I don't have him as a top 12 back on the week or anything, but I think he could be a sneaky play against this underwhelming Titans defense. Like, I'll be honest, I thought his knee was cooked coming into the year. Like, microwave pizza rolls cooked, still frozen in the middle and burned on the outside, you know? But somehow the man is still grinding out efficient carries and proving he's still got it. Like, he's not flashy, he's not athletic in the way you'd expect like 5 years ago, but he's still a bowling ball with eyes. He's tied for 14th in rushing yards over expected per attempt, which puts him right there with Cam Scatterbo. Now he gets the Titans, who defend the run about as well as a wet paper towel defends against soup. They're bottom 5 in basically everything. I expect the Texans to be up in this one and Chubb to just be the hammer in the second half. All right, let's go on to the running back bottom feeders of week 3. Another week, another time to shout out Chase Brown. Like, I shouted him out on last week's studs, and he didn't disappoint because he disappointed. He had 10 rushing attempts for a total of 3 yards. The object of the game is to gain yards, and he failed at doing so. Like, check out this graphic by @Kyle_Borg. Chase Brown has the fewest rushing yards through 3 games since 2000 with 45 or more carries. That's 25 years of history saying, hey, you're bad at this. Among backs with over 20 carries, he is dead last at 0.8 yards before contact and 4th from last at 1.2 yards after contact. Like, this Denver defense was easily the best in EPA per play last year, and even though they've been banged up a little, are 8th this year and 6th against the run. Like, you can't trust any Bengal at this point against tough defenses. The offensive line is bottom 3 with a backup quarterback that's just struggling. So Quinshon Judkins has come in guns hot since he debuted in week 2. He's 3rd in the league in rushing yards over expected per attempt at an incredible 2.01. He just had 94 yards and a touchdown against what was thought to be the best defense in the league in Green Bay. Even though he's definitely climbing the rest of the season ranks, I have him as a sit in this game against Detroit. The Lions are unstoppable on offense right now, and even though Cleveland looks like a top 10 defense, I expect them to get out to an early lead and keep it. Like, that would be the worst script for Judkins. They use Jerome Ford on passing downs. Also, Detroit is the hardest team to run on in the NFL. They lead the league by far in EPA per play against the rush. So it's likely just a bad game script and bad defense for Judkins this week. So sit him if you can. If you've liked the show so far, drop a review. If you haven't, just lie to the internet like everyone does. All right, it's time to crack open another scroll from the booze realm. This one comes from the Netherlands at the Untappd festival. Our mystery man gives this beer 3.25 stars and no review, but he drops a picture of himself playing music bingo. So obviously I love music bingo. I'm a millennial and breweries are basically my church. So a lot of it is European music that I know nothing about, which is understandable. But then they have some American music. And here's the songs they chose to represent us. Nina Sky, Move Ya Body, Daddy Yankee, ABBA, Bee Gees, Dolly Parton, the Backstreet Boys. Okay, I'll give a pass on that one. I can do a mean I Want It That Way in karaoke. But this is how we're being presented to Europe. Daddy Yankee. Like, I would think we're garbage too. Okay, let's forge ahead to wide receivers I like betting on for week 4. So my poor lad McConkey, I have him in both of my home leagues, and it's been depressing through 3 weeks. He's wide receiver 57 right now, after finishing wide receiver 14 last year. The ageless Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston finally figuring out he has hands has kept McConkey to a relatively low target share of 19.6% and a red zone target share of just 6.7%. Like, I've lowered him a little bit in my rest of season rankings, but I'd still bet on him being the best target earner the rest of the way. The Giants, meanwhile, have allowed the second most points to the wide receiver position and the most in the NFL to slot receivers. Lad's slot rate is at 61.5%. They also play a ton of man, and Lad eats man coverage for breakfast with 29% first read share. This could be the big one we've been waiting for our little lad man. I'm going to go with a little bit of a sleeper for this one and shout out Matthew Golden. Like, if you think Lad started off slow, Golden is wide receiver 80 right now. It's been even more frustrating because he's been so dang close to some huge gains and touchdowns. Like, his snaps are trending in the right direction, as he was in on 71% last game with 86% of the routes. He led the Packers in receiving yardage against a tough Browns defense, and they have no Jaden Reed for the foreseeable future. The Cowboys defense made Wan'Dale Robinson look like a legitimate deep threat, so a 4.2 speed route running demon in Matthew Golden could be even better. Like, Jordan Love wants to throw deep, Golden is their deep threat. The Cowboys play too high at way too high of rate. The Cowboys give up the most fantasy points to receivers. It's the game he finally shows us what he can do. I know this sounds like blasphemy, but I think Jamar Chase throws up another dud this week. Like, this situation is beyond ugly. Jake Browning leads the league in interceptions, and he's played 7 quarters. They're the worst running team in the league with a bottom 3 offensive line. They're 27th in plays run per game, just lowering the ceiling even more for all their players. Denver is 22nd, so this could just be a slow-moving game for all. Chase goes up against the reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Patrick Surtain II, and yes, he'll line up in the slot some this game to try and get someone else on him, but the Broncos give up just 14 points per game to receivers. Like, I would sell low on Chase. There's just no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, he'll have a few spike week games, but those will be buried in many duds like this week. You know who gives up even less points to wide receivers? The 49ers. You know who has looked like a shell of himself through the first 3 weeks? Brian Thomas Jr. You know who looks like they have the yips and can't catch a football twice in a row? You guessed it, Brian Thomas Jr. You are good at this game. BTJ has been scary bad. He's had 25 targets on the season and turned that into 7 catches for 115 yards. Check out this graphic by @FantasyPointsData. You can see how badly he's done with his usage. Like, he should be up around 13 to 14 points per game, but he's under 7. Like, Trevor Lawrence has just been inefficient and inaccurate also, as the Jags are 21st in EPA per pass and second worst at less than a 56% completion rate. Like, I think BTJ will find his footing at some point. It's not going to be against this defense. All right, I only do one boom tight end every week because the position's just not fun to talk about. TJ Hawkinson doesn't just play for the Vikings, he's fully transformed into one. Like, look at this man. The hair says, I pillaged coastal villages. The beard says, I just chugged an entire horn of mead. And the face says, my weapon of choice is a 200-pound hammer. At this point, he's not running routes, he's raiding monasteries. The dude just looks like he showed up on your fantasy roster and demands tribute in gold. And honestly, with how many points he'll score you this week, he might as well. He had a 25% target share with Carson Wentz and a 30% first read share. That's elite tight end stuff. Pittsburgh has also allowed the second most points to the tight end position. Their linebackers look like turnstiles in coverage. Jordan Addison coming back, I think, only helps him, as you can't shade coverage towards Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. Like, he should have a wide open middle of the field, and Wentz showed he looks for him often. Someone you need to sit for the foreseeable future is Dallas Goedert. Like, everyone on the Eagles is healthy, so Goedert just sees the trash left behind by Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and there's just not enough to go around. The Eagles finally opened the passing game up a little bit against the Rams in Week 3 with 33 passing attempts, and Goedert had a 6% target share. That's not going to get it done. Like, he's shown he can thrive with one of the big two out, but they aren't. And the Eagles are more times than not going to pass the ball less than 25 times. Sit him for your mental health. Okay, I hope you got something useful out of this boom and bust Week 4 breakdown. I'll do one more sip of this Weihenstephaner Kristallweissbier and make my conclusion. Okay, so I think this goes 5th on the big beer board, right in front of the Panther Island EOS. It was delicious. It has the smoothness of a light beer because it's filtered, but it packs that banana and clove wheat beer punch at the end. Like, I enjoyed every sip of this bad boy. Final pour score for this stout is Sparkling Banana Fantasy Recovery Beer. You'll want one of these at Tuesday night happy hour to recover from a heartbreaking loss to your grandmother in your home league. But that's going to do it for this episode of Tap Into Fantasy. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps the show find other degenerates like you. Hit me up on X at LG_fantasy or email at tapintofantasy@gmail.com with any start-sit questions you have. Thanks for tapping in, and until next time, happy pours, happy scores.